What's up, good people? It's Eric Taylor, Big E Astrology, and I am back again with another amazing podcast with a very amazing guest on episode 270. And it's my anniversary. 3 years ago today, I returned home after 85 days in the hospital, 40 days in coma. And that actually, without us planning it, ties into my amazing guest. She is a professional astrologer, a Reiki master, author, teacher, and a medical intuitive. I bring back to my show Miss Laura Bruno. How are you today, Laura?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again. Good to be here.
Oh, it's so great. And, just even with your placements, and we'll kind of tie in how, we actually met. It's so fitting and perfect that on the anniversary of my returning back home, that you are my guest. Like, we couldn't have planned this any better. And I don't think consciously either one of us, obviously you didn't know. I didn't even think about it, but that's how the stars align and the universe works. So, first off, you are the Gemini, the amazing Aquarius moon, and the Virgo rising. So, how are you doing with Pluto hitting your natal moon in Aquarius?
It's been quite a journey. I'm used to it by now. So yeah, my natal moon's at 1 degrees Aquarius, so it's been getting quite the workout for the last year and a half, exactly. But then even creeping up for the last few years. I mean, I knew this was coming, so I've been preparing for this for like 5 years because I'm also having my Chiron return. So, and it's opposite my Uranus and square my progressed sun. So I knew this time period was going to be pretty intense, and it has been, yeah.
Well, that's good. And you guys, we're going to talk about a lot of the things to set you up tonight for 2025 astrology. And obviously, this is for the next 20 years. So, this really, Pluto and Aquarius, will set things up. I wanted to ask you, and we'll get into how we met, and that ties into a book that you're currently writing. But for anybody else who has Pluto and Libra, like yourself, what do you feel that this trine of Pluto Libra to Pluto Aquarius in transit, how do you think that could play out for people in terms of the positive aspects of Pluto with the trine energy?
I think it's going to come to a lot of empowerment for people if there's been imbalances, especially in relationships with Pluto and Libra. Having that Aquarius energy may allow enough detachment to be able to kind of assess what's actually going on and see, is this a relationship that really needs regeneration, or is this a relationship where it's toxic and it needs to go? I think it will be easier to move on with that Pluto energy in Aquarius because there's a little more of a sense of adventure there. So yeah, I think it's going to be easier than Capricorn squaring the Pluto in Libra.
Oh, definitely that. And I think it may be easier for people to find love and relationships over the internet,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's ironic because it leads to my amazing assistant tonight, and she'll be here in a second to read the chat because my wife and I met on Match.com. So
Wow.
we were like trailblazers 16 years ago in terms of finding love. I was telling somebody the other day, I said Match needs to reach out to us to do like a real success story commercial. But with Libra relationships and marriage, trining Pluto Aquarius, I can see that being a major thing. So, hello to everyone in the chat, and my amazing wife will be reading the chat for us tonight, so we're not distracted. So, you want to see who's here?
So, hello everyone, and tonight we have Coco Locks with us and Polly Platinum, and he says, "Smash the like button." Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Paulie Platinum. Welcome to the show.
E. Claybrook.
Oh,
Peace.
okay. E. Claybrook came on with Joy Baker. So welcome back, you guys. Thank you so much. And you guys can definitely ask Laura and I questions about any of these big moves and transits in 2025. So, Laura, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the aspects to Pluto? Because, right now we had it this morning just with the moon, and Mars is a little bit away at 3 degrees, and the moon currently, as we're on live, is at 6 degrees. But I know January 3rd, we have the exact Mars Pluto opposition. How do you feel people can feel that in their own individual personal lives?
I feel like that's really going to play out with any power struggles that people have been having, any need to assert what you need. So that kind of Leo heartfelt, but also, Leo the individual as opposed to the group energy of Aquarius. I think we're going to see more of what we've been seeing where political parties are kind of splintering. There's a lot of discord there, but at the same time, I know I'm hearing from a lot of people that are like, whoa, like I have been imbibing information that is not correct. Like it's confusing me. And so people are taking back their sovereignty. And I feel
Mm.
like that's one positive way that that could play out.
Yeah, and to me, sometimes, Mars opposing Pluto, you guys, can be quite explosive. And then with Pluto Aquarius, power to the people, freedom, liberation, sometimes that makes me wonder, especially with these wars, and Leo can represent, right, politics, government, entertainment. I think we could see some information that's extremely secrets being brought up, right, about celebrities and politicians. But then I think, we could have some pushback to governments and authorities where the people are like, listen, it's over 400 days. We need a ceasefire. It's this, it's that. We've got to end this. We've got to end the oppression in Congo, the Sudan. That's going to be fascinating, right? To start off the new year in 2025, which also, we can't forget the numerology, a universal 9 year, right? And that connects to Mars 9 and its endings, right?
Mhm.
Completion. So, who knows? Maybe we could actually stop some of these wars, but I think it's going to be something pretty volatile when you got Mars and Pluto kind of dancing together. So I want to ask you this. Why don't you share with the audience what you're working on and how we met?
So I am working on a book called, the working title anyway, is The Astrology of NDEs. And the subtitle, What the Sky Teaches Us About Near-Death Experiences and Those Who Have Them. And
Mm.
so I contacted you after seeing one of your videos where you were talking about your near-death experience. And I thought, well, hey, he's an astrologer. I bet he actually has a correct birth time. And that's what I'm looking at. The project has really grown. It was originally, I thought I would maybe interview 12 people, have 12 chapters, and just kind of do it. But I'm finding so many different patterns. And now I'm looking
Mm.
at progressions. I'm looking at what's happening in the sky at the time, and then, transits to the individual, but then also just there seem to be certain sky aspects that actually are very supportive of having a near-death experience. So I'm really kind of looking at natal chart markers and just the full gamut of all the different Gemini ways that I can analyze the information.
I love that. So, is there, not giving anything away major of the book, but is there like maybe one placement in the natal chart, like a common theme that you've seen or one aspect?
Well, this Lynn Coiner, the astrologer, was the first person to notice this. The ruler of the eighth house, or a planet in the eighth house, quincunx or in conjunct something else in the chart. And I am finding that that shows up not all the time, but I mean, probably 90% of the time in people that have NDEs, they have that
Mm.
marker in their chart. So that, and then certain things with Pluto, I'm finding that if you have tightly aspected Pluto in your natal chart, or say Pluto at 29 degrees or something like that, then that seems to make people a little more NDE prone.
Well, those are close for me, not exact, but I know I had the Chiron return.
Hmm.
What else? Gosh, I know you know some of it better than me. The T square
Hmm.
with Uranus, Chiron, and my moon.
Hmm.
And definitely there was the North Node in Gemini in my 8th house of sudden events and emergencies. And then obviously it was close to my birthday, so I was about to have the solar return. And was it also near like it may have been near a new moon. There was just,
There was a new moon in Virgo that
yeah,
was right on, I want to say it was on your natal sun, or no, it was on your natal moon. There was a new moon in Virgo that day, I want to say. No,
right. Maybe it's on my
there were,
natal South Node, maybe.
yeah, but
Yeah.
there was a lot. But the thing that I noticed, because I looked at your information before we got on the call, one of the things that was really extraordinary about your situation was your progress chart. You had this massive stellium in
In
Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Yeah, I mean, it was like so many things. Let me see how many.
It was like
Uh,
5 or 6. It was like
yeah,
sun. Yeah.
progress Sun, progress Moon, progress Mercury, progress Venus, progress Jupiter, progress Neptune, all in Scorpio, and your progress Neptune was at 29 Scorpio. So like this massive kind of death and rebirth energy happening. And that's another pattern that I see. Scorpio shows up all the time in,
Really?
yeah, and a lot of times with the North Node in Scorpio, but also Gemini shows up all the time, which
Really?
in a way, I mean, it's quincunx Scorpio a lot,
Makes
right?
sense, yeah.
But also my theory, and this would apply to you also, just because you've got all that Virgo in your natal chart ruled by Mercury. So Mercury Hermes, that's a psychopomp, and that was the god that could go in and out of the underworld without permission. And
Yes.
so that's my theory on why that just keeps showing up, because it's consistent where something with um either Mercury or Gemini or Virgo that shows up again and again in my research.
So do you think that transiting North Node in Gemini 8th house, right? Because that's literally the lungs, emergency,
Mhm.
sudden
Yep.
events. And the North Node is like kind of consuming. It's like illusion, smoke, destiny, purpose.
Mhm.
But one thing I want to share that I thought was so fascinating, and it's, fitting since my wife is right here. You pointed out to me that when I went into coma September 6th, that Pluto was squaring Venus.
Mhm.
And maybe that's why I saw my wife trying to kill me and cheating on me and all this stuff. Explain to the audience like how that could potentially play out in someone's chart, or why that may have created what I actually experienced in the other dimension and other realms.
Right. So that was like a sky transit. That wasn't
Yeah,
personal to your chart,
right,
but
right.
I am seeing this where the sky transits somehow show up in, regardless of what the personal transits are, that the sky transits somehow leave an imprint on the event. And so with Venus square Pluto, that could play out as like power play in a relationship, or obsession, or extreme
Jealous,
jealousy,
jealous, yeah.
or I mean, some of the stuff that you were seeing, I mean, it was pretty twisted, right?
Oh,
So,
God.
so yeah. And then Mars was also a trigger, because Mars was going over your natal Pluto in Virgo. And that was, I mean, that set off a whole bunch of things. But what's interesting is, didn't you think that you were, like, visiting Mars or something? I mean, there was a
Well,
Mars
okay, yeah,
element
so it's
to,
funny that you remember that. Yeah, actually, I was I was going to, I never saw a moment of darkness, all these different vignettes. And in one of them, I was going to, it was either Oakland or San Francisco, and I was getting on a plane to go and travel to visit Mars,
Mhm,
quite
mhm.
literally.
Yeah.
So, that is just, I can't wait for the book. And actually, if you need one more person, I met somebody recently from presenting at the Phoenix IAMS International Association of Near-Death Studies Conference. I was on a panel this summer, and I met a young lady who, you know, she doesn't necessarily know that much about astrology, but she does actually have the chart. She's going to be on my podcast, and her story was fascinating. So, you know, if you happen to need one more, and
Oh
I
yes,
get a
and
lot.
I'm in the writing phase finally. It's been a lot of research because the book just kept growing. I mean, there were some things I expected to find stuff with Pluto and with Scorpio and, you know, maybe Uranus because of sudden change or something, but some of the things are, I mean, it's undeniable when you start looking at so many different charts, and a number of people have had multiple NDEs. And so that's also interesting when you look at how does one near-death experience connect with another near-death experience that the person had. Oftentimes it's the same trigger. And so,
Mm,
yeah, it's curious. You had a real exact trigger too. And one of the things that, I mean, I've looked at this for a long time just because this was part of my car accident that I had,
right,
which I didn't actually die in the car accident, but it played out like an NDE.
right,
And
right.
like I considered it kind of the end of my life. And that's Pholus. So Pholus, the centaur, the small thing, big effect centaur. So
Oh,
when Mars crossed your Pluto, it quincunxed your natal Aquarius Pholus. And so you had this
really?
small thing, big effect trigger as well.
That is fascinating because, you know, you actually, I have to give you that credit. You were the one that turned me on to Folus. You know, I worked with some asteroids and fixed stars, but, you know, Folus just wasn't in my toolbox because, you know, I'll tell the audience, right? There is like a million things in astrology, and no one astrologer could look at every single thing. And Folus is not like major, major, but I love the way that you tied it in and explained it to me. And then it's fascinating that you say that because the Folus in my natal chart, I wonder a transit, was it also at that time Saturn was in Aquarius? And that's when in the fourth house, and it's an indicator of that, right? When Saturn can transit your fourth house, you guys, it can actually, not always, but it can kind of show the end of your mother's life. But then in my mother's chart, Aquarius, Saturn, 12th house, because she was a Pisces rising, right? You look at the 12th house as the end of your own life, and the 8th house, your father. So it was actually quite literal. So I wonder, because when I fell into a coma, Laura, I just knew when I was awakening that my mom was fine because she was doing way better than me,
Mhm.
you know, and she actually wound up dying of pneumonia, not COVID. That's a whole nother story. But that makes me think about, and now I got to go back. Was Saturn hitting my natal Folus? Do you know what I
Um,
mean? Because
Let me check. I can check for you. I have those transits. Let's see. Um, no, Saturn wasn't there yet, but Jupiter was getting pretty close. Jupiter was at 24 Aquarius, and your natal Pholus is at 28 Aquarius. So it wasn't quite in orb, but it was
so
moving up
Saturn was
there.
what, at like 15 degrees or
No,
something?
Saturn was like 7.
Okay, so it was
Yeah.
early on. Okay.
Mhm.
But that's still, you know, hey, still being in the same house. But that Folus, it definitely turned something that was maybe smaller into something bigger. Are there any other things that people could gain or ascertain to learn from Folus besides like that kind of small to big? Is there anything else with it?
So it's kind of like the butterfly effect. So, you know, it oftentimes it seems unrelated. The reason I started tracking it was because I kept noticing in my life, mine is at 7 Pisces,
Mm,
and I kept noticing that so many things would, I mean, it would be bang on right at 7 Pisces or 8 Pisces. And my Mars is at 10 Pisces. And so it's like, okay, yeah, maybe it was my Mars, but it was not at 10. It was always at 7 or 8. And
wow.
so then when I saw the Pholus there, I was like, huh. And then it was there for my car accident. It was there for my marriage. It was there. I mean, it was just all over the place. And so then I mean, I have a lot of clients that have also had car accidents and near death experiences. And so I started tracking Pholus with them. And very often, fullest will show up in those kind of car accidents where it doesn't seem like it's that severe of an accident, but there's like a life-changing, long-lasting effect. And that's very fullest energy right there.
Okay. So before we get into, I want to jump into the Pisces North Node, just briefly explain kind of like the path you were on, because you weren't always into astrology, and then the car accident and just the sort of your kind of almost, NDE experience and what happened to you.
Yeah, I was not just not into astrology. I thought it was like complete bunk, bogus. Like, and after I had my head injury, so prior to the head injury, I was on an academic track. I was going to be an English professor. And I couldn't read after the car accident. I couldn't read, I couldn't be under any kind of fluorescent lights, and I had no short-term memory. So kind of hard to be an academic in that situation. I did get all kinds of disability accommodations and everything, but I lasted 3 weeks. So it just wasn't meant to be. I knew it wasn't meant to be, but that was my path, And then gradually I started kind of dabbling in astrology. So I lost the ability to read like, with my eyes, but I had the ability to read energy fields, and basically I had no filter, so I just kind of became psychic. I was already pretty intuitive, but I just like all the filters went
Well,
away.
wait. They may not have seen your first podcast interview with me, but just give them that little insight, because you are medical intuitive. You were getting messages before the actual accident, right? Share that.
Oh yeah, lots of dreams. Like I had this recurring dream where I would be standing at kind of an academic party and a dog would come up and like start devouring my left butt cheek in the middle of the party. And I would scream and be like, oh my God. And everybody would just ignore me. And then I started laughing hysterically because I thought it was so funny. It was just ridiculous that this dog was devouring me and nobody cared. And then I reached a point where I was just like totally neutral and the dog was devouring me. And I was like, And I had that dream so many times before the car accident, and that's actually kind of how it played out. I mean, I lost my left side of my brain, so left butt cheek, left left brain.
Oh my gosh.
But
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
initially I was so upset. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't go to grad school. I can't do my sales job anymore. I can't drive anymore. I mean, I lost everything. And it
Wow.
just nobody really seemed to care or understand because I looked fine. And I
Yeah.
had horrible migraines and everything and no rational side. I could talk. I'm a Gemini. I got 4 planets in Gemini. I could talk here, but it didn't make any
You're not
sense.
stopping a Gemini from talking. We got
Yeah.
one of those at home. We know.
And and then it was just funny that I couldn't read and I couldn't do academia, but I was like totally psychic and getting downloads about people's health and just things that I shouldn't know or I thought I shouldn't know that
Right, right.
but the thing was, prior to the accident, that used to happen anyway and I hated it, but I would try to push it away or ignore it. I did a lot of dream interpretation for people, and like everybody knew I had psychic dreams. And so I had this kind of double life, very
Mm.
Gemini, right? But after the car accident, I couldn't do the rational stuff anymore. And
Wow.
I would get these intuitive downloads, and if I didn't share the information, the headaches would just, magnify until it was like, "Oh, uncle, okay, I'll say it." And then like magic, the headaches would go away. And so it was like shock therapy to get me to do this kind of work. But even after doing all of that, it took me years, and it was really not until I wrote a novel. And there was a big astrological component to the novel, and I interviewed my friend Timothy Glenn, who is an astrologer and has been for many decades.
Okay.
And I had a random birthday for my character, and I had the dates that it was a near death experience actually in the novel.
Oh, really?
Oddly, yeah. But I didn't tell him any of the plot of the novel. I gave him the name of my character. I recorded the reading as though I were her grandmother going to the reading with an astrologer. And he basically read my entire character and like came up with the entire plot of my novel just by looking at these quote unquote random dates that I had given him. And I was like, wow.
Wow, yeah. Oh, then you got the bug then, huh?
Yeah, and then I, gradually started dabbling, and then deep dive, and then I just realized, oh, all those energies that I'm sensing, all those time windows that I'm sensing, it's transits, it's planets. I'm like, when I do a life path reading for somebody, I'm intuiting what their natal chart would tell me. And so it was like the Rosetta Stone. I mean, I when I finally went deep into the astrology, it just went everything came very fast.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, let's go back to the chat with my amazing assistant.
Oh, yes. I'll be here off camera.
Come a little closer.
I'll be here off camera. But anyway, so we have E. Claybrook, and she says her Pluto
I think it's a he.
Oh, he. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay.
He says his Pluto is in Scorpio in my 12th house. I don't know what that means. LOL.
Well, you're going to be, it's going to be squaring, from the third house, Pluto. And so this is my theory. And you guys, continue to write your questions and even ask us the questions about the astrology of 2025. But, I've got this theory, Laura, and I want to see what you think about it. But I feel with the square, this is time for the Gen Y, AKA millennials, to kind of like, sugar, honey, iced tea, or get off the pot, right? To kind of step up. Like, I feel like they are going to become the leaders of the world for the next 20 years, right? You're born between, even though it touches the end of Pluto Libra. So really from 80 to 95 are, the millennials. I think that square is going to really make them, squares are opportunities for growth. It's going to force them and push them to kind of get out of their money, power, sex, control, and identifying, through sometimes major victimhood, their traumas, and then kind of coming out of the, ashes, the phoenix rising, to be the Anguilla, the constellation of Scorpio, soaring like the eagle. So the healed millennials are going to be supercharged, I feel, from the square. And I believe it's going to take them to new heights and new levels. What are your thoughts on, for E. Claiborne, the Pluto Scorpio 12th house, and also just that square to Aquarius?
So I always think of the 12th house as, I mean, not only is it the unconscious, but also the collective. And so
Yeah.
whatever the collective experience of Pluto is, that's going to come through. And so if you're an artist or some kind of other creator, that it's like you're going to have your finger on the pulse of that Plutonian energy. But that's always with Pluto in the 12th house.
Yeah.
And especially with Pluto in Scorpio in the 12th house, that's very Plutonian. So, but as far as the squares to Scorpio, I mean, it's going to make a big difference in terms of timing. What degree is it?
Oh, yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you've got Pluto in early Scorpio, you're already feeling that impact. Whereas if you've got Pluto in mid to late Scorpio, I mean, you're going to feel some of it just because of the square energy of Aquarius to the square energy of Scorpio, but it's not going to be like a direct hit until it gets within maybe 5 degrees or so of that.
Yeah.
So, but I do feel like because Pluto rules Scorpio, it's likely to be an easier integration than Capricorn Libra square.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think it's time for them to step up.
Mm-hmm.
It's millennials' time. And just so you guys know, Pluto in 2025, it's only going to get to 3 degrees in Aquarius. So that's all it's doing this year, 0 to 3. So, keep an eye, because that's what Laura was hinting to, right? If your Pluto is at like 18 or 20 degrees in Scorpio, you're not feeling it until like maybe 27, 28. You know what I mean? And then I always break it down into decans, right? It's sort of like 6.5, 6.5, 6.5 or so. The Aquarius decan is going to be really from 24 to like 30, 31. Then we'll get to the Aquarius Gemini decan, and along with kind of that hitting a little piece of that Uranus Gemini, and we're going to have super like tech boom. I think that's when the Jetsons will come to fruition, Laura, from our cartoon days growing up, right? And free energy, different types of travel, but that'll be more 31, 37, 38. And then the last one, Pluto Aquarius, where maybe we got a preview from new photos of Kim Kardashian, like, in sexy poses with a robot. I think we're going to have relationships between sort of artificial intelligence and humans with the Aquarius Libra final decan from 38ish to 44. So this Pluto Aquarius is going to be big. Any other questions or comments before we get into
let me see. Not so much a question, but KJ is here.
Hey,
and so
KJ.
is Temptress, the Enchantress.
Hey, Temptress.
And she can't wait to hear about North Node and Pisces.
Well, that's where we're
she
going
has
next.
That North Node and Mars in Pisces in the 11th house.
Okay.
And then Living in Truth, Prophetess Keys of Truth is here.
Wow, what a name. I love that. Welcome.
Yes.
And if you're new,
please. Living in Truth.
And she may be new, or was she here last time? If you guys are new, please share your big three. And now you've got two astrologers, because Laura, I like, live in the chat, new people, I like for them to share their big three, and I just give them a quick little quick rundown about their big three. It's always fun and fascinating, and I love, just kind of looking at big threes. So, one more?
I want to confirm that people can hear me, just because I'm further from the mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can always come a little closer. But I will tell you this. Before we get to the Pisces North Node, we do have the final Mercury retrograde of the year, right? And it starts November 25th to December 16th in Sagittarius. And so what are your thoughts? I'll say this. Mercury retrograde used to never bother me, Laura. I swear, because it's retrograde in my natal chart in Virgo. My whole life, I never noticed it. I would hear people talk about it before I was a professional astrologer, even when I first started studying and then became professional, nothing. It was either 2 or 3 years ago, Mercury retrograde decided to flip its head on me. And every Mercury retrograde has messed up my computer, emails, just caused so much in my life. So one, is it a real thing for people? And then two, how can people experience it when it's debilitated in Sagittarius?
So yes, it's a real thing. One of the other things that led me into thinking that astrology actually might have something real to it was, for a while, I used to rent office space at this, it was a place called the Spiritual Element in Reno, Nevada. And a number of the other people were really into astrology, and I did life coaching and medical intuitive work. And I happened to mention one day, I was like, yeah, man, it's really weird. All my clients are having all these misunderstandings. It's so weird that none of them have anything to do with each other. And yet they're all having the same issues. And everybody simultaneously said Mercury retrograde. And I was like, oh, I got to start tracking this. And sure enough, I, lost emails, all of that. And so it used to affect me, actually, like everything would go bonkers because, with Virgo rising and all that Gemini, lots of Mercury going on. I think, so I printed this out because it's actually December 15th that Mercury stations direct, and it's stations direct on the same date as a full moon in Gemini. So that's like an extra potent day. But the degree that Mercury stations direct is interesting. The Sabian symbol is Sagittarius 7. You always round up. Sagittarius 7, Cupid knocks at the door of a human heart. So,
really?
that could be interesting, just in light of what we're talking about with relationships and that dynamic. But with the Mercury retrograde at the same time that Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini, so they're in mutual reception.
Yep.
Yeah, it will be interesting. There's so much else going on that I feel like lately Mercury retrograde isn't even the most intense astrological thing happening.
No, especially because, and it's such a great point, right? We still have, I think it's till December 13th, 15th, 17th, Neptune retrograde.
Oh, December 7th.
7th, okay,
Neptune
the 7th.
stations direct, yeah.
Okay, the 7th. then we still are dealing with Chiron, Jupiter, and Uranus. So, like you said, there is a lot going on, and then plus a new ingress with Pluto Aquarius. So Mercury retrograde is definitely kind of sort of in the shadows, right? But Mercury in Sagittarius, you can get very blunt, very
Yeah.
arrogant. You could, bloviate and exaggerate. There's a lot of lying in the storytelling. You said something really great, and it just dawned on me before the show. Today's Wednesday. It's the day of Mercury. Another thing we didn't plan. And you are Mrs. Mercurial, and I'm Mr. Mercurial, my Virgo stellium, and your Virgo rising, and all the Gemini placements. So, this is just meant to be. But I find it very fascinating. And for me, as a Virgo, I don't like to step on people's toes so much. But I have a lot of Sagittarius. My grandfather was a Sag, cousin, a couple of really good friends. So I've been around the Sagittarius energy a lot. And one thing that I love about them, they're so smart, fun, and adventurous, and freedom, and all this good stuff. But when they are storytelling, they can exaggerate so much. And this is Sag Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, any of them. They exaggerate, and then sometimes they'll mistell the story, and the sun signs too, or even lie. And so for me, because the way my brain works, I forget nothing. I can remember conversations from 3rd, 4th grade. So sitting there watching the Sagittarius kind of like blah, 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 tell this story, I'm laughing and whatever, but I'm like, that's not true. That's an exaggeration. That's a lie. You know what I mean? So the Virgo mind is kind of like BS, BS, you know what I mean? So I find that to be really funny. So we could actually experience a lot of that, you guys. So just be mindful during this Mercury retrograde. For the collective, not just for any Sagittarius placements, So just always keep aware of that. So let's jump into January 11th. This is great for me because I have a natal Pisces North Node and a Virgo South Node with my wild Virgo stellium. And you have Mars and Fomalus. Anything else in Pisces?
My descendant is in Pisces.
Oh, yeah. The descendant, that's 7th house. Yeah. So it's an 18th month transit, give or take, a week or so or whatever. But because for me, we know Virgo Pisces is the health axis. And you're dealing with kind of like the physical wheat and medicine, service to humanity, Virgo the Virgin, right? Kind of the only mutable sign that's just one entity. And obviously, in terms of humans, you only have Virgo, Gemini, and Aquarius. But you got the Gemini, the twins, the Sagittarius, half man, half horse, the centaur, and in Pisces, the 2 different fish go in 2 different directions, which I live with every day, and I love it in my wife. But with Virgo, it's just kind of, this one, sort of being, I guess, right? The Virgin Mary. So besides health, spiritual and the mental and physical, I guess, when you look at the Pisces North Node and this transit, what type of themes can the collective expect to experience? What do they need to sort of let go of with the Virgo South Node? And what do they need to move towards with the Pisces North Node?
So I feel like collectively we're going to have a big shift. I mean, we're having all the drums of war with the North Node in Aries, and all of the identity politics also have really risen to the top with the North Node in Aries. And with that North Node moving into Pisces, I mean, first of all, when it moves into Pisces, especially when we get around like late March, it's just like Pisces all over the place. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in late Pisces then. It's like the flood of everything. But even as the North Node moves in January, I think we're going to have a kind of a dialing back of some of the, pitting against each other, the warring energies, the aggression, the need to like say, well, I'm right and you're wrong and all. I think we're going to move into a little more of a unity consciousness. I hope, right? I'm hoping.
It sounds totally right. Because what you're also saying about that, people forget Aries. It's assertive, aggressive, but cardinal signs initiate.
Right.
The mutable, it's a different energy. So continue. That's really a great point.
So I do feel like, and this is going to depend on, level of awareness. We've been having the shocking revelations throughout 2024,
Oh yeah.
but some people have not absorbed those. Some people have managed to like not absorb those at all. I feel like as we move into 2025, it's going to become impossible to ignore a lot of those revelations. And so we may also get kind of cleansing tears of grief. We may get,
Mm,
the people that were on the pedestals falling down, and some of the disillusionment that you can have with Pisces,
yeah.
especially when we get that North Node connecting with Neptune. And
Right
then
off the bat.
yeah, and then in March, we've got both Mercury and Venus. So Venus doesn't go retrograde that often, but 2025, Venus retrograde in Aries, but then moving back into Pisces at the same time frame, roughly, that Mercury's doing the same thing. And then they all kind of hang out with the North Node and
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 Neptune and the
Neptune,
sun.
and we get the moon coming through at one of those points. Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
wild. Yeah.
So
So
March Madness will be a double entendre.
yeah, and also probably very wet March.
Oh.
Just all that
Extreme
Pisces.
flooding, yeah. No, we can expect that. Um, yeah, we actually may have forget about because that's the thing that people don't really get sometimes with the mutable signs. It's sort of like the yin yang. Mutable signs, you can almost say they're like bipolar, especially with the seasons, right? Because with March, you're getting a little bit of winter and a little bit of spring. So that's going to be extremely fascinating and probably some really tremendous weather that we can
Mhm.
experience. But I love what you said about kind of calming things down. But I also feel we've got to really focus on our health, right?
Mhm.
The Virgo South Node. What do we need to purge, release, and detox, right? Or as Americans, right? You see it more in indigenous cultures, but we actually, get poison and toxin more than most countries. So detoxing, intermittent fasting, parasite cleanses.
Oh yeah.
I think this is going to be really huge for 2025. And then, you throw in the mix, we'll get there in July when Uranus goes into Gemini for a sneak preview. Officially it goes in 2026, I believe it's early April. So, this is going to be really powerful. And I love how you said, now, when Venus and Mercury touch on Neptune, how do you think that will play out in the lens of communications about our art, culture, relationships, and finances?
It's going to be interesting because so the end of March, so Neptune enters Aries on March 30th, but on March 29th, we've got a new moon in Aries and solar eclipse. That's right, like between 9 and 10 of Aries. So we've got an eclipse that day in Aries, but then Mercury retrograde re-enters Pisces later that day and
Oh,
conjuncts Neptune in the 29th degree. So like maximum Piscean, watery, Neptunian, woo.
whoa.
Yeah, and so then we'll have the stellium, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node all in late Pisces. And of course, before the moon gets into the Aries sign for that eclipse, so a couple days prior, we've got the moon in Pisces too. So I mean, there's this real tension this year with the new hot, dry energy of Aries, right?
Yeah.
Versus the maximum wateriness of Pisces. And that cusp between Pisces and Aries is going to be so active this year. And then on top of that, with Pluto in early Aquarius, so there's going to be like the quincunxes happening to the South Node,
Yes.
um well, not to the South Node, but
No, yeah.
eventually. But
Yeah.
to anybody that's got anything in early Virgo, you're getting a yod, and you're getting like a transiting yod throughout the year, because anytime something crosses kind of 0 to up to 4 degrees or so of Aries, and then back into Pisces, and then Pluto in early Aquarius, that's forming this finger of God pointing to those early Virgo signs. So I feel like, I have Virgo rising here. So I feel like the early Virgo is like the sleeper transformation of 2025. People aren't really expecting that so much, but I feel like they're, anybody that's got anything in the very, very late, fixed or very, very early of the mutables.
Well, that's a great point. And that Neptune dancing in the Aries, that's just a quick retrograde because it goes in permanently in February of 2026 when we have the exact Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Aries, which, that's a whole separate episode that you may have to come back for. That one's going to be heavy duty, you guys. Really some deep spiritual revolutionary new beginnings in 2026. And that's a universal 1 year. So literally new beginnings, right? So when I think about that Virgo South Node and it being hit up, there's a lot of collective energy that needs to be purged and released about being critical of others. And also I think about the lack of self-love, right? Being overly self-critical. So I have one of my isms that I always say to my clients, and I say, my greatest hope for you today is to retire from negative self-talk. And I know Geminis are good at it, probably second place, but nobody can destroy themselves verbally or mentally, causing stress and anxiety like a Virgo and Virgo placements. So I want you guys to be highly aware what Laura's saying in terms of the Yod and the King, King in conjunctions. I always like to say that better. Quincunx, playing out. But this Virgo South Node, there's got to be a point where that you integrate this energy where you learn to be kind to yourself and to stop over criticizing others, but to retire from the negative self-talk. And along with that, we've really got to get our health game going. So let's go back to the chat for a second, and then we'll finish up sort of this Pisces Virgo access.
All right. So we had 3 people sharing their sun, moon, and rising.
Okay, great. This will be fun.
So Lit has come back, and she says her sun is Aquarius, her moon is Capricorn, and her ascending is Gemini.
Oh,
I love watching both of your eyes go up.
Yeah.
I
thought my hands
your
up.
eyes go up and over.
So Gemini.
You got 2 astrologers about to break it down for you.
And then the Aquarius moon?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Aquarius.
Sorry. Aquarius sun.
Oh, Aquarius sun in the 9th house, Capricorn moon in the 8th house.
Gemini rising.
Well, I'm a Capricorn moon, and it's in the 8th house, and that Aquarius sun in the 9th. I always like to do this, but Laura, you're here. Well, quick little thought for Love and Light. What do you think about that energy? Obviously, that Cap moon, that's why she's here tonight, right?
Yeah. I mean, Cap moon is, I think, a more somber moon. I mean, unless you have other placements that lighten it up. But my clients that have a Capricorn moon, I mean, they like their security. And, there's like financial security especially seems to be important for that. But with the Aquarius sun and did you say Gemini rising?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sun in the 9th
Yeah.
house.
I mean, that's very harmonious, lots of air energy. And I mean, depending on, what the degrees are, if they're early, then that's going to be really active in 2025 and 2026. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, later on, you're still going to get, Jupiter moving the rest of the way through Gemini. But with Uranus, and the nice thing about when Uranus enters Gemini, which is July 7th, is that Venus does it on July 4th. So 4th of July, we get Venus kind of, smoothing out the rough edges. I mean, we'll still get surprising information and and turn the world upside down stuff with Uranus in Gemini. But I like that Venus is kind of, putting her little graceful touch on things before Uranus comes in and like tips everything over. So.
Definitely. And I love the Venus Gemini people because they are, I call them accidental flirts, just like Venus Aquarius. And also they are kind of socialites, and sometimes I think the men misinterpret Venus Gemini women because they're so friendly and talking, and sometimes they can talk with their hands. So usually when a woman's all up at a guy's face talking and they're not in a relationship, the guy will tend to think, oh, she's digging me, she likes me. But you got to watch out. Venus Gemini women, they'll talk to anybody. They'll talk to like a butterfly. You know what I mean? So it's not always that they're flirting with you guys. So I just want to throw that out there for the collective. But Venus and Gemini is definitely the socialite, and they need a lot of input in their love language and relationships. So I think that's great. Go ahead, let's hear the other two.
So we have Yogini Star.
Oh, welcome to the show. That's an interesting name.
Nice?
Yeah.
And his sun moon, I think it's a he.
Okay.
Sun moon and rising is a Sag sun, Leo moon, and Scorpio rising.
Oh, Leo moon in the 10th house, Scorpio rising, the Sag sun. Well, I'm a Scorpio rising, so I'll start first with this one. That Leo moon, if you are a lady, you give the warmest and nicest hugs. If you're a man, or just in general, the Leo moon in the 10th house, definitely could be extremely creative. And whatever you're doing for work, or you're part of your public image or legacy, or just in the workplace, you're going to be a pretty dynamic leader. I mean, let's, take the cat out of the bag. Most Scorpio risings, they tend to march to their own drum, having Aries in the 6th house. They like to have their own jobs or their own careers, start their own businesses, Scorpio risings, because they can bang heads sometimes with leadership. But that Sag sun in the 2nd house, as I tell the people with the Scorpio rising, Laura, it's usually here to break generational curses, but it's the gift and the curse, right? You'll never go broke and homeless with Sagittarius, and then especially the sun in the 2nd house of earning money, right? And stuff like that. So that's a good thing. But with Scorpio risings, you can go through a multitude of transformations in your life. But I know that sun and even that Leo, depending, you'd have to let us know, they could be in a trine. So that's a pretty potent, powerful chart right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, it's also really going to depend on the degrees, because if it's early of Leo or Scorpio, then Pluto and Aquarius is really going to be making a difference. And also those planets moving into Aries this year and crisscrossing that Pisces Aries cusp. If it's something early in the fire signs, then that could be harmonious as well.
So before we get to the third one, now you remind me, you said Neptune's dancing into Aries, and I believe it's for a few months, and that's March 30th, correct?
March 30th until, let me see. I forget.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I know that it's, when it retrogrades in, it stays for a couple of months, I believe. And then Uranus Gemini, I believe, is a couple months as well before they go back. So, these are 2025 is interesting because I feel like it's like it's the trailer of the big film, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the trailer of the end of days. And I don't mean that literally, people. No, always me, Jupiter on the ascendant, faith over fear. I'm very optimistic. We're going to be all right. But, well, honey, let's go to the chat, and we can get to the last person and any other comments.
And then we have Janice Montoy.
Hey, Janice.
Montoy. Sorry. Sag sun and moon, Pisces rising. I have Pluto in Leo in my 6th house, 25 degrees.
Okay. Well, what do you think about that Sag sun and moon for the Pisces rising in the 10th house?
Sag, sun and moon, Pisces, right? See, it's a little tricky because you use whole signs and I use Placidus, and so for me, with Placidus, you don't know like where that is going to be. So it's a little hard for me to comment on that. And the only reason that I use Placidus is just because I did intuitive work for so long before I did astrology. And so Placidus just tended to track with what I was getting. But I mean, I appreciate the whole house as well, but I don't know where that will be in terms of what I normally look at. But I mean, with Sag, Sun, and Moon born on a new moon in Sagittarius, so that is strengthening that energy. And I did want to circle back to what you were saying about Mercury in Sagittarius, because while you can get the exaggeration, there is also with Sagittarius an emphasis on truth, and like truth with a capital T, like what's the transcendent truth? What's the overarching philosophy? And so when you have that energy strengthened with both the sun and the moon, you're looking at someone where it's kind of go big or go home. You don't want to do things halfway. Going to be more inclined to take your studies, like to a higher degree rather than just like the Gemini dabbling.
And I know Janice's chart. I've done her chart. She is brilliant. So you hit that right on the head. And I think this Mercury retrograde period for her, kind of dancing around her natal sun and moon. And I believe she has another placement there as well. You're right. I think it could be really a great time for her. And give people your philosophy when they're born on a new moon compared to a full moon.
Full moon, you've got that tension. I mean, and I find, full moon personalities tend to be almost like larger than life, but can be more, I don't mean this in a bad way, but can be more volatile in the sense that you have that automatic tension in there. Whereas with the new moon, it's almost like whatever that sign is supercharged. And so I find that people that have, were born on a Gemini new moon, like they're very Gemini. People that are born on a Sagittarius.
Oh gosh. That is so true. Wow. That's a nice perspective. And just 3 quick examples of those full moons, the kind of very big, right? We just had both the presidents elect, right? Or nominees, Harris and Trump. And then I think about Michael Jackson. So, you can, full moons, like you're here for something. You know what I mean? It could be good, bad, or indifferent, but, it is pretty big and sometimes even extremely dramatic. Depending on, right, with Michael, it's Virgo, Pisces, Kamala, Aries, Libra, and Trump, Sag, Gemini. So they're definitely fascinating placements. And trust me, I wasn't trying to badmouth the Sagittarius, because God knows I love my grandpa, my cousin, and my buddies. But I think it's just sometimes being on the sideline and you watch it in action. The truth, but not just the truth. What I see with Sag, especially with Sag Moon, my wife has that. It's the righteous truth. What is the right thing to do? Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Strong, passionate beliefs. And with those Sagittarius placements, you guys, depending on how you were raised as a child, you could be extremely dogmatic. Sometimes it takes Sagittarius energies a lot of transits or a lot of time to leave what they were taught and instilled in the programming in the subconscious mind from childhood. So I've seen that a lot with clients as well. And it can be, right, the teacher, preacher, philosopher, and all that stuff as well. So any other comments before we get back to the Pisces North Node?
Okay, so Tantra says Venus and Mercury in Gemini. I have to apologize to men. I seriously have quite a few times. So
okay. Well, let's move on.
And then And then we have Yogatini saying Sag Sun and Leo Moon 22 degrees and a trine with Aries, Mars and Chiron in Aries.
Oh, what are your thoughts about that fire trine?
Well, the 22-degree fire trine, I mean, your Chiron is going to be, so Chiron for 2023, 2024, the real hot spot was right around 19 degrees.
Yeah.
But for 2025, the hot spot's going to be more around 23 degrees of Aries. And so
Yeah.
lots of healing coming into play. And
Big
with
time.
the Grand Trine and fire, you're talking about, what actions do you need to take in order to heal? What
Yeah.
do you need to do to initiate systemic healing?
Definitely. So let's talk about. I feel like we kind of gave a good visual for the Pisces Virgo access to the nodes, but let's talk about our Cancer people with Jupiter. In early June entering Cancer for a year. What can the Cancer Sun Moon risings sort of expect with having Jupiter in Cancer where it is exalted, but not always the financial blessings I've noticed with Jupiter in Cancer, more of the spiritual divine energy and the nurturing teaching. But what are your thoughts for those people with the Sun Moon rising in Cancer with Jupiter coming in?
Well, if you are someone, so for me personally, I find that when I'm happy, I always make more money. And so like that, it just plays out that way. And I know that's true for not everybody, but it's definitely true for some people. So
Right.
if you are that type of person, then having Jupiter in Cancer probably will increase the abundance, just in the sense of having a general feeling of upliftment, of optimism, of confidence that, oh yeah, I got this, I can try this. So I feel like having Pluto out of Capricorn also is kind of a nice relief for people that have Cancer
Cancers are going to be so happy.
placements. Yeah. So I mean, early Cancers, yeah, you're going to be getting the squares from whatever's crisscrossing that Pisces Aries cusp. So you will have some of those squares, but I don't know, Jupiter's pretty yummy there. So I think people are going to like that.
Yeah. And I think, for Scorpio risings, it could be a time of publishing, writing books, travel, teaching, and I think, obviously for the Cancer risings, the one thing I would say, watch out for, like, especially coming, for the summer, watch out expanding of the weight. Like, don't overdo in the barbecues and the cookouts this summer, because when Jupiter comes right in your ascendant, and you're talking about June, this could be like a summer where you maybe put on a 5 to 10 pounds. So just be mindful of that. But you're right. I think with the sort of the Pisces energy and Jupiter going to Cancer, I think water signs will kind of, feel like kind of nice. And, that can help a little bit with the Scorpios dealing with the squares to Pluto. But now I want to touch on that Uranus Gemini starting on the 7-7 portal. What do you feel, like, I mean, obviously, gosh, right? There's a lot going on with the mutable signs. Saturn, Neptune, North Node, Virgo, South Node, Jupiter still for, 5.5, 6 months in Gemini. And then we add the Uranus to Gemini July 7th. What can that do, not only for us in the sneak preview, but just for the Gemini and immutable signs in general?
Well, transformation, I mean, in the sense of, flipping something on its head. So, expect the unexpected, and with it in Gemini, it's likely to be things dealing with communication, things dealing with information, how we share information, but also maybe short trips. Like taking short trips could prove to be like, whoa, I just like flipped my whole worldview. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't mean to like go to like, Wyoming and then move there. Like, like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It's but you know what I think we're gonna see with that early, as soon as it ingresses in, it's gonna be trining Pluto Aquarius. And
Yep.
that Uranus Pluto trine, I really think we're gonna see a new iteration of the internet
Mhm.
This could be when we, get out of the fiat currency and get to, hopefully not the Fed now, but definitely digital currencies worldwide, right? And new forms of technology,
Mhm.
right? And then even it's also going to be hitting Sedna. So I think we're going to get more things coming up out of the oceans, not just what they admitted to the other day that seems to like not
Yeah.
be a big news story, right? Oh yeah, there's just UFOs and aliens up under the ocean. Oh really? Thanks for sharing. Like, so
Yeah.
this is going to be quite fascinating, and ooh, we've got a summer ahead of us.
Mhm.
This Uranus Gemini. But I do think, Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury, what do you think that will do for learning and travel in terms of though education, right? With potential Trump and RFK talking about changing education,
Mhm.
right? Over the summer, getting into the fall for the, new school year. How do you think that will play out with education and travel?
I think there is going to be a change, especially in early childhood education, because you get that more with the Gemini,
Yeah.
less the higher education. That would be more Sagittarius. But um, yeah, I see things shifting with that. But I mean, the thing with Uranus is you also get the liberation aspect, right? So things in education where, I mean, when I went to school, it was like we were taught how to think, like not what to think, but
Right.
how to think.
And it's
And
changed so much now.
yeah, and like the humanities, I mean, it used to be that you were really studying this whole core curriculum of, you know, all of the classical things that they studied like in ancient Greek and all of this kind of energy, and we've moved much more towards the standardized testing kind of thing, and rote memorization and all of that. And so one of the things that I do feel with Pluto in Aquarius, the sign of kind of the humanities, right?
Yeah.
And then Uranus moving into Gemini, I do feel like we're going to see more of a return to kind of more classical education and an emphasis on learning how to think logically, learning how to process information for yourself rather than
Mm,
like the teacher tells you that this is the answer. You actually learn the process of how to arrive at your own answer.
I love that. And I visualize and see that too. It's time, right? I really feel I taught for 13 years and 10 years with disabled children. And I feel like the mystery schools need to come back up and a revamping of education. And I also think this could also increase homeschooling. Because
Yeah,
if the educational system does not change, you have more and more people awakening and not wanting their children to be brainwashed and like sort of the Rockefeller school system and indoctrination. So I think there will be more independence and free thought communication, and that could increase homeschooling, but hopefully, like you said, a change to early education, especially K through 6. That
Mhm.
would be huge. That
Yeah.
would be really, really transformative and powerful. So, talk to me about um, don't we have a Mars retrograde? Do you have
Mhm.
the dates for that?
Yeah, Mars goes retrograde on December 6th. So stations retrograde in Leo, and then goes all the way back. So the interesting thing about Mars stationing retrograde is stations retrograde right around 6 degrees of Leo, which is the US natal North Node.
Yes.
So getting up to that point while Pluto is, not quite on the South Node in Aquarius, but it's going to be within orb. I think Pluto gets up to like 3 degrees 58 minutes, so almost 4 degrees of Aquarius. And so with Mars stationing retrograde in Leo on the US North Node, I think we're going to have questions about, what direction is the country going in, but it's because it's stationing retrograde and then moving all the way back to 17 degrees Cancer, which is
Yeah.
kind of close to the US natal sun,
Yeah.
13 Cancer.
Very close.
So during that whole Mars retrograde period, I
Next to
do.
February, right? Like the 26th?
Yeah, let me double check the date for you here.
I think it's
Stations direct, the 23rd of February.
23rd. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we'll have that second, right? We have January 3rd, and then I guess towards the end of February, we'll have that second opposition to Pluto.
So yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about Mars is that Mars re-enters Cancer on January 6th. And the Sabian symbol for, the last degree of Cancer is a daughter of the American Revolution. so,
Wow.
no pressure there
On January 6th?
on January 6th. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, guys, are you guys taking notes of this in the chat? Hold on, wait. I think we have a question or comment in the chat. What do you?
Well, we have a few people. So let's see here. We've got
That's wild.
E. Claybrook is saying, what about Capricorn? Okay, she has 4 planets in Capricorn and 4 in Leo.
Yeah,
Does that he? Sorry. Anyways, I don't know if there's something we want on that. But get to it if you can. And then Moon Goddess 45.
Hey, Moon Goddess
says she's writing a book.
Oh, great!
She spoke to Eric, and she's a Scorpio rising.
Yep.
And
a great time to write the book with Jupiter in your 9th house coming up this summer. We
have Don Oyster, and he gave us just his one sign. I think it's, I'm not sure. Hold on. I had to pull it up. Libra. He gave us a Libra sign, and that's all. So I'm not sure what to do with that. But I said, hey, give us all 3.
Give us your sun, moon, rising. But yeah, I mean, Capricorn, you're kind of out of the limelight for a bit. With Pluto leaving, you should feel, if you've got a lot of Capricorn placements, this is like I survived the last 16 years, and a real exhale energy. I joked before we came on the show with Laura, I'm a Capricorn moon, but it hasn't even dawned on me that Pluto had been kind of hitting me up for a while. But I know for me, I can, really say, I've had 13 surgeries in my life, and a lot of them were after 08, at least 9 or 10 of them. So that's what Pluto was doing to my moon. So I'm looking forward to actually a clean bill of health, and no more aches and pains, and real transformations. So yeah, Pluto leaving my Cap moon in my 3rd house as a Scorpio rising. I'm excited. Oh, we have another comment.
Yeah, so we have Xanthara. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Oh, welcome, new to the show.
Get me.
Okay.
Anyways, Capricorn sun, Cancer moon, Libra rising.
Oh, the Cardinal Queen is what she should change her name to, right? So the Libra rising, the Capricorn sun.
No, oh my gosh, did I say that wrong? Aquarius sun. I read that totally wrong.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. Aquarius sun, Cancer moon, Libra rising.
Okay, for the Libra rising, the Aquarius sun in the 5th house, and the Cancer moon in the 10th. Well, the sun and Pluto, depending on your degree, Pluto for the next 20 years will be in your 5th house for the Libra risings. And, that can really bring a lot of transformation and change to your hobbies and creativity, but could also dig up maybe some secrets. If you've got any kids that maybe they've been hiding some stuff from you. Maybe they're on Snapchat and you don't want them on there. Maybe your high schooler is on some apps that you feel are inappropriate. So I would check their technology if you have children. That would be a good, healthy tip for you. And what do you think about that Cancer moon, Laura, in the 10th house?
Well, I mean, Jupiter is going to be moving through Cancer in the second half of the year. So, and into 2026. And Jupiter moon, I mean, that does tend to increase empathic awareness. And so, you may find that you become more sensitive and just, have to do like, energy brush off or something to recalibrate. But also could be a very supportive, kind of buoyant time. I did want to address the Capricorn question,
Yeah.
the prior question, just because, yeah, with Mars retrograde back into Cancer. So if you've got anything from 17 to 30 degrees Cancer, 29, 59 Cancer, you're going to have Mars going through there twice. It has already gone through once, but we'll be going through that and again another 2 times. And so, if you've got Capricorn placements, then that's a Mars opposition. Not necessarily a terrible thing, but at the same time, be a little careful on those dates, especially. I find Mars acts early, and so it's less about the exact opposition than like a couple days before the exact opposition. But
Oh yeah.
just be careful. I know for myself, when Mars gets anywhere near my midheaven, I have freak accidents. It's like uncanny, and I don't
Oh,
know why that would be, but it is so consistent that. So I'm just a little more careful
okay.
when there's exact Mars transits going on.
And then we also know Mars being, in its fall in Cancer. My famous analogy is that's like giving a mother a machete or a machine gun in the kitchen, and she just needs a good knife to cut the meat and vegetables. So it's intense. Mars in Cancer is definitely intense. So anything else? But maybe, as we wind down, talk a little bit about that Venus retrograde again. I know you kind of touched on it, but the sort of Aries to Pisces,
Mhm.
that is the cusp of rebirth. Venus in Aries can be very charged with its fashion and its love romance. And, Venus Aries, they don't really finesse love so much. It can be, pretty charged, but also our finances. What are you thinking about that Venus retrograde from Aries to Pisces?
I I
And when does it begin again?
Venus retrograde, it's in March. So March 1st, Venus stations retrograde in Aries and
Mm,
stays in Aries until March 27th and then re-enters Pisces. And then when she re-enters Pisces, we get Mercury conjunct the Neptune in Pisces, and then Venus and Mercury both in Pisces there. So
wow.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Mercury enters Aries on March 3rd. So initially, when Venus stations retrograde in Aries, there's this crisscross, and so I mean, what we're really going to be seeing a lot of is Mercury Venus interactions
Yeah.
because we're going to have a lot of conjunctions and different signs and mega stelliums and all of that. So I think the language of love is going to be really up. But it will be interesting because that Aries Pisces energy is very different.
So
And
different. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's probably going to be a bit of a push pull in relationships in the sense of like initiating things, but then oh, it's not time yet, and that goes along with the North Node in Pisces too. I mean, Virgo South Node, very linear time oriented.
Yeah.
What's the 5-year plan? What time is your appointment? All of that. Pisces North Node's kind of like, yeah, we're talking about divine timing. Like you may have your idea of when something is supposed to occur, but
Oh my God.
it's going to occur in like a magical synchronicity storm of divine choosing, not your own. And so I feel like that's probably going to play out with relationships as well.
Laura, it sounds like you were just listening to conversations between my wife and I in the house. I'm always like, well, what time is the appointment? We got to get there on time. And it's not. She says, don't worry. Da, 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 da. The Pisces Virgo, like we live that life all the time. So it's really kind of funny. I was just like, wait a minute, has Laura got a camera in our home? It's a real thing. And I'm proud of myself, right? Every once in a while I got to give myself a compliment. I'm definitely a recovering Virgo anxiety stress, like time, this and that. Like I've gotten way better.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
You definitely have.
Thank you. I've been trying, Laura. Laura, God knows I'm trying because, for any of you guys in the chat, when you've got a lot of Virgo, and it's different for Gemini, and I want you to speak to that too, but a lot of Virgo placements, like I can't be late. Like it stresses me out to be late. Like to me, I'm almost late if I'm 5 minutes early.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the Virgo way. And so, really trying to walk into my Pisces North Node, it's foreign, but it's starting to feel better to not have those restraints of like, it has to be like this, it's got to be like that. Like even just in simple things, like with my food choices, my wife being the Pisces and having Venus and Jupiter in Aquarius, she's opening me up so much to having more of the open mind and exploring and eating things that like I would have never eaten before I got married to her. So, Virgos, we have to kind of loosen up the tight grip.
Yeah.
And do you feel that the mercurial side of Gemini, it's not as intense in Virgo in terms of like the need for the right time or what's perfect? It's more just back and forth input, would you say? Or
Gemini is so multitasking and just, I mean, for me, and granted, I've got a pretty tight trine between Uranus in Libra and Saturn in Gemini. So it's like my husband jokes that, oh, that Laura Bruno, she's such a tyrant. Oh, that Laura Bruno, she's such a rebel. So there's this like push-pull thing. But for me, the way that I get things done is I have a long to-do list, and there's like, okay, this is the thing that I have to do today. And I almost never do that thing. But if I don't do that thing, and I get like 7 other things done, because like the rebel part of me and the Gemini part of me that needs to have the freedom to, oh, let's go here, let's try this. It's like, as long as I let myself off the hook for the one thing, then I'll get tons of stuff done. It took me a while to figure that out, but that's my secret as a Gemini to actually
I
get
like
things
that.
done.
Okay. I like that. And I think sometimes for me, I kind of marvel at the Gemini energy because I know for me, the Virgo, right, I've got to analyze and assess and feel comfortable. And then there's the initiation. With Geminis, they just jump right in.
Yeah.
And so like I really admire that, and not having any placements in Gemini, I see that different energy, right? And I see it every day with my son. And so it's really fast. And I've had a ton of Gemini friends in my life. So it's really a fascinating experience because, Virgo, you always think of the sign after. Virgo's about like cleaning up the mess that Leo made, right? And Virgo's like, trying to organize things and put it in categories, where you're like with Gemini, it's like they've got 4 hands. It's like the octopus effect, right? They're just like, oh, who needs categories? We're just doing.
Yeah.
And so it's really fascinating to literally watch that and to learn from that. So 2025, what is your overall feel of the year, to prepare, the audience and the collective watching this on the replay? What are the major themes that we can expect, and what are we to evolve through? For the general, obviously everybody's chart's different,
Right.
but just the general energy for 2025 with that.
The general energy is that 2023 and 2024 have been a really long slog. There have been a lot of extremely intense transits, but it's all kind of been more of the same. And 2025, we actually start getting very, very different energies. And so, I mean, so many different planets changing signs. And I really feel like that Pisces North Node is going to make a huge difference, and an advantageous difference, in the sense that it is more mutable and willing to just go with the flow. And so as the changing sands happen, as the new information comes out, as all of these things are changing signs, there's this energy of like, yeah, it'll all come out in the wash. And so I feel like it's probably going to feel quite surreal. And you're going to want to pay attention to when the planets are in those early stages of the new signs, because it's just the preview. And
Yeah.
so if you don't like it, then, make a note and shift that energy the next time that it happens. It's a very Gemini sort of year in a way that, it's like, oh, if you don't like it, just change it up. It's okay.
I love that. So, okay, that's a perfect, sort of interpretation or breakdown. But I want to ask you this: with the Pisces North Node, right? And these are the nodes of karma, you guys. Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node, but it comes in and it's opposite. So it doesn't start at 0 and 1. It's coming in at 29 and goes down.
Mhm.
If you guys are not familiar with that, so it's going to right off the bat. Be right there with Neptune. So for the collective, and I think of the Sagittarius rising, Pisces, fourth house, right, for America, the television, Neptune came in around 2011, right?
Mhm.
Do you feel that the North Node will change or dissipate some of the deception and sort of brainwashing and manipulation from the television? Or do you think the North Node will kind of push us? Will it push us deeper in it? Like, I kind of wonder, like, how will that, will it break down the veils where we start to see clearer? Or could it increase it? Like, what are your thoughts and how do you think it may actually manifest for us?
I mean, if it was the Pisces South Node, I would expect more of the negative play out. But the interesting thing is that the North Node moves into Pisces, and then not that long after, I mean, 6 months or so, but then Neptune moves into, or no, just 3 months later, Neptune moves into Aries, and then Saturn moves into Aries. And I feel like, the fire sign of Aries, first of all, Neptune, Saturn, I mean, as Saturn creeps up towards Neptune, more so in Pisces, we're going to get a little bit of a check
Yeah.
on, like Mr. Realism is going to be like, hey, you're delusional. And so I think that's going to be happening even while they're both still in Pisces.
Yeah.
And then the North Node is moving back there. But once both Saturn and Neptune are in Aries, I think that it's going to kind of dry out some of the brainwashing. That's my hope. I don't
Well,
know
yeah.
for sure, but that's my hope.
Well, yeah, because I think it's a real new beginning. So, honey, we're gonna have to. Our reader is gonna have to leave soon. But what do we got in the chat before we?
So, Audra Dye is here.
Hey,
I love you,
Audra.
Audra.
And just so you know,
Anyway.
Laura, she was my last client and my first client as I was going in the hospital getting sick, and the first chart that I did when I came home.
Wow.
So for Audra to be here on my anniversary of my return home, thank you so much, Audra. She was so patient.
She will always have my heart.
Yeah, and she actually communicated with my wife. But Audra, when I got to finally meet her and speak to her, she was like, I knew you weren't going to die because I needed you to do my chart. I was like, exactly. That's great.
So
Go ahead.
Santhara just said she also has Uranus, Neptune, and the South Node in Aquarius, but she has no children. So just a little follow-up to that.
Okay.
Now,
Uranus, Neptune, fifth house. Yeah, you were quite a dynamic healer and probably even teacher in a past life with Uranus and Jupiter, South Node, Aquarius, fifth house. That's some powerful past life energy. Yeah. So.
E. Clayberg says, it's my Mars in Leo at 28 degrees. Yes, things have been feeling better, more relaxed.
Okay.
And you are being thanked for this live stream. It's been really good.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for coming and watching. And do me a favor, you guys. Please, Laura, I want you to share your information so how people can connect with you for all a myriad of amazing services you do. Share what you do with everybody. And also not only just your, and it will, we'll have it all. It's already down there in the description. Her YouTube, her X, and the website, but share that with everybody.
So it's just Ask Laura Bruno, and that's my YouTube handle. AskLauraBruno.com will get you to my blog and website. And on Twitter, well, X, I'm Ask Laura Bruno. I don't really do anything on X other than just post my YouTube videos. So
Me too. I don't have
if you're looking
time,
to
right?
interact with me, that's not where to do it. Do it on my blog or on YouTube. I'm much more in those areas.
Yeah.
And as far as services, I do astrology. I do medical intuitive readings. Also past life readings, any kind of relationship coaching, or just transformation, support, and then tarot readings and Reiki sessions and classes. So yeah.
I love that. And I forgot to tell you this. So an old family friend that my wife knew from Colorado follows you and then started following me from our first episode we did together. His name was
Cool.
Nathaniel. And he really loves your work or whatever. And then he actually came to town and came by our house. And so it was really cool. And I was like, well, he didn't realize that like when he started following me, that like he, his mother, knows my wife and all that stuff, but he started following me from when we did our first show together. So I thought that was so awesome.
It is such a small world.
It's really a small world.
It really
so
is.
funny because I've known this
young man,
and it's hard for me because I've known him since he was like probably 12, and now he's grown, and I'm just going, oh my God.
And he loves both of our work.
And I thought it was just so wonderful. And it's just that those 6 degrees of separation that we talk about. It's just, I love it, love it, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been so amazing. Well, you got to go. We can still go on for a couple of minutes, without you in the chat. Yeah. Oh, you can send him in. Yeah. But, this is so much fun, Laura. I hate to say goodbye. So my wife's got to pick up one of the kids. So I'm going to have my older son come in for a minute or two. But I want everyone to please like and share and subscribe. Go subscribe to Laura. Laura Bruno's got a great YouTube channel. So go follow her, please. It's just right there in the description. Click on it, hit subscribe. It don't take nothing but a couple clicks and buttons. And also, you guys, make sure for my channel and her channel, you click the little alarm button and then click all, because then you get the notifications when we do post new things, when we're going live and all these different events and stuff. And that's really important. And then just a little housekeeping, the Scorpio birth chart sale ends tomorrow night at midnight. So Scorpio Sun and Risings, just email me, eric@BigEAstrology.com, and then Sagittarius, look at a community page. And, my Sagittarius birth chart sale begins tomorrow as well, because Sagittarius does begin, I think it's around 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So, it ingresses into Sagittarius, and we're in that cusp of revolution. So I want to ask you this, because I get kind of irritated about this, Laura. This is one of my astrology pet peeves. What do you consider an orb for the cusp? Because I only do a 5-degree orb, right? 28, 29, 0, 1, 2. And I base it more on numerology, right? Because 27 is the end of like the energy of a sign, because 2 plus 7 is 9. That's completion, right? You start to feel the ingress at the, 28th, obviously much more at the 29th, 0. And then the 3rd degree, that coincides with 1 is the father, 2, the moon, the mother, and then 3, right, is expansion, Jupiter, but it's like the child. So I feel that it's a 5-degree orb. There's some astrologers on the internet, and I never knock or criticize any astrologers. It's not my business or place, and I think it's not cool when people do it. But I don't agree when I see these 7 or 9-degree orbs for a cusp. I'm like, no, you're not feeling it. So what is your philosophy? Because I know plenty of astrologers that only use 29 and 0. And then I know some who only do a 3-degree orb, 29, 0, 1. Where do you stand with the orb of a cusp for the sun sign or any other placement?
Well, this is a very Gemini answer, but
Okay.
it depends on the sign. I give a wider orb for anything that involves Pisces because
Ah,
that's, no boundary. And oftentimes the Pisces energy is more sensitive and, will empath what's going on. So I will give whatever the orb is. Like for quincunxes, so in conjunct 150 degrees, it's usually plus or minus 2 degrees. But what I found in my near death experience research is
hmm,
about 3.5 degrees. If I broaden it out to that, boy, does that pop off all over the place. And so,
really?
yeah, so I tend to, if I'm looking at a quincunx, I look at the standard plus or minus 2 degrees, but then I'll widen it out a little bit. For cusps, yeah, I only look at maybe like 28 to 02 in terms of the degrees on a cusp.
Okay.
Um,
You do like a 4-degree orb.
like a 4 degree orb, well, like two, plus or minus two, just to call it a cusp.
Yeah.
But in terms of transits, I mean, it depends on your level of consciousness, right? I mean, I think people, oddly, the more conscious you are, the more you are impacted by transits. I mean,
Oh, you can
it's
say
weird,
that
but you
again.
really are. And so I find those people, a 5 degree orb of a transit, like you might really be feeling it out at 5 degrees. But generally I look at 0 to 3 degrees, and I pay especially close attention if something is like 0 degrees, 00 minutes. I'm like, ooh. And with my research for the NDEs, I'm looking at the longer transits. Like you had mentioned, your T square with your Chiron return opposite Uranus squaring your moon. But
Yeah.
that's a looser orb. That was in effect for quite some time for you.
Yeah.
And so what I'm finding with people is, yeah, you have the background energy, but then I'm looking for, okay, what went exact? What was the trigger? And a lot of times it's Black Moon Lilith. That's a big one, but only the true. If
Yeah.
you look at the mean Black
813.
Moon Lilith,
Yeah.
nothing. It's
Yeah.
like hardly anything matters with that. But the true Black Moon Lilith, wow, is that a reactive point?
Really, that's so fascinating. And I always encourage people, right? That's just like you said, I only look at the true Black Moon Lilith. So that's why I tell you, tell my clients or people, go to astro.com, and in the bottom right corner, miscellaneous, you put in H13, and that gives you the true, because
Mm.
the osculating apogee, that can be in different signs and houses from the mean, which is the glyph. When you see the true Black Moon Lilith, it's like a LIL, and it's got a little circle in it. And that's the one you guys want to look at, because you're right. I find it to be so powerful. And what's so fascinating to me, um, it seems to be, the divine and dark feminine a little stronger in a female's chart, but it's still relevant with men. So I don't want
Oh
to make
yeah.
it like a gender thing. But I noticed that it's stronger in the angular houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. Is that something that you experience? And then also, I will see sometimes in the sixth house, work affairs or relationships starting,
Mm.
or sometimes jealousy, or different things at work with Lilith in the sixth house. What is your experiences with the true Black Moon Lilith, angular, and other places?
So fourth house Black Moon Lilith often will show up where there was childhood sexual abuse
Yeah.
or the threat of it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have that when I was growing up, but I have Lilith at 29 degrees Sagittarius, and
Mm,
this is with Placidus houses.
okay.
So I have a fourth house Black Moon Lilith, and I find that oftentimes people that have Lilith and Sagittarius, the thing that is the most triggering for those people is if they cannot speak their truth. Like if somebody tells them, "Oh no, you don't feel that way," it's like, "Ooh, that's a fighting word there." like you don't. And but in the fourth house, oftentimes you get people that either fight sexual abuse, like they're trying to stop childhood sexual abuse, or they've had it.
Okay.
A first house Black Moon Lilith, I find, often shows up in people that end up having autoimmune conditions like Lyme disease or lupus or things like that. Or I can
I had
also see.
somebody the other day with a Capricorn Lilith and like all types of health issues. That's fascinating. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that was why I started following Black Moon Lilith in charts was because I do a lot of work with people that have Lyme disease. And I just started. So when I started doing astrology officially,
Okay.
I had already been doing intuitive work for like, I don't know, 16 years or something. I mean, I was dabbling in astrology, but when I actually started really reading charts, I had this huge backlog of clients where I knew, I mean, I had coached them from, you know, for a long time through really difficult transitions in life. And so I knew them very well. And I
Mhm.
was able to pull up their charts and go, okay, you know, let's look at all the people that I know that have Lyme disease and okay, what's the pattern? And then let's look at people that have fertility issues. What's the pattern? And Black Moon
Wow.
Lilith often plays a role in both of those. And so I started tracking that. But the other thing that's interesting for me, and again, this is Placidus houses, but seventh
Which
house,
can be the same as whole sign. It's not
it
always
can,
the
yeah,
same.
sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But I'm just clarifying because I don't know that I can speak for whole house signs. But what
Right.
I notice is seventh house Black Moon Lilith, especially in men, they often wind up dating witches, or they had like a bipolar mother, or
The
there's
seventh house.
something that
Really?
shows up where like that erratic female energy shows up in their relationships. So yeah, it's an interesting one for
Okay, wait.
that.
Before we get to the 10th, I want to tell you. Okay, so in the 4th, I've also seen physical abuse.
Yeah.
That was in different signs. I know someone with Lilith Sag 4th house, no sexual abuse, but that whole truth thing is important.
hmm
Like that can play out, and also the need to leave the home, like freedom, adventure, like
hmm
always, like very strong, you know.
hmm
But I want everybody to know, right? I don't want you to be afraid and think, oh my God, my kid or I have Lilith in the 4th house. Does that always? It's not always sexual abuse.
It's
It's not.
not always, but
But
it's not a surprise if it does show up, but
yes, but
yeah.
I found Lilith in the 8th or the 12th can be sexual abuse too.
Mhm.
Because the 12th house is the bedroom and the
Yeah,
8th house deals with sudden events and sex. So
yeah.
I've seen that with a multitude of clients. And on the first house, I see where someone could walk into a room and just be like, hey, grand rising, everybody. And you get the rejection and the repressed energy where people are like, oh, shut up and stop talking, you know, like people, but also all my Lilith clients' first house, men and women will hit on them. No matter your gender, you'll have
Mhm.
both genders hit on you in the weirdest ways.
Mhm.
Very sexually charged. And in the 10th house, and I want to see your experience, in the 10th house, you guys, I've had clients literally get hit on at work, at their job,
Mhm.
you know, or even right after work. Like if they, you know, the company goes out for drinks, someone's inappropriate and making advances at them, like at the local pub or bar after work. Those
Mhm.
are all 10th house experiences. So I had a client who literally a woman, and she had Capricorn there, and she's like, "Oh my God, is that why all these older men at work always hitting on me?" And I was like, "Yeah, Lilith Capricorn." It was so textbook. I was cracking up. So, what have you seen with the 10th house?
With the 10th house Lilith, I find a few things. I find people who have a career of helping women escape narcissistic abuse or recover from sexual abuse, like so
Mm,
they're working with Lilith type people,
okay.
or people that have some kind of major power struggle with a man. Well, if it's a female, they have a
Yeah.
major power struggle with a man where there's like a narcissistic component in the workplace.
Yeah.
Or if it's a man and they have Lilith up there, they may have, you know, the witchy boss that, you know, is playing out in a very kind of shadow negative way. But I do want to say, I mean, I love Lilith
Yeah.
personally.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
I she's much maligned. And
yeah.
when we integrate Lilith, it's like fairy godmother energy, right? She'll bless you or she'll curse you if you do not respect her, or
Right.
if you like trounce upon her sovereignty, then she's going to be very reactive. But
Yeah.
on the flip side, if someone respects her and honors her sovereignty, Lilith will love that person like nobody else, because it's so rare to have that reflected back to the Lilith part of you. So
I like that perspective. That's fascinating. And then I want to say one thing and then ask you about that. And then another thing about Pluto. So I look at the Lilith in a way too, right? It's our gut instinct, our intuition, our root chakra, pheromones, hormones, pre-verbal, pre-rational. But I also see where you can face the repress and rejection energy. It also, on the positive, like you were mentioning, the sign and house, it can be tell the story of like your tribe of people. So like if you have Lilith and Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, risings, they may just like energetically or spiritually get you and have your back. So I've seen that play out as well. And then one thing I want to mention in the seventh house, it's not always, but I've seen this with women who have Lilith in the seventh house. Sometimes their partner or husband or boyfriend can cheat on them because it's the other half. So I've actually seen that literally happen a few times. So when I see someone with Lilith in the seventh house, I just say like, hey, just be mindful of this. It's not definite, but this couldn't play out. Now I want to ask you another thing about the Lilith. Where have you seen Lilith work affairs? More in the 6th, more in the 10th? Where?
I really haven't run into a lot of work affairs. Just
Oh, okay.
I mean, it just may be my clientele, but I can only think of a couple situations, and I don't remember where their Lilith was.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that I have seen a couple times. Or meeting a girlfriend or potential boyfriend at work. Lilith, like, you know what I mean? Or kind of like, connecting with a higher up or a coworker. I've definitely seen that. So we had I think it was L, and we'll get to the chat in a second. But Pluto in the 12th house. A lot of people have so many different interpretations of it. But one thing I have seen, if you do not, number one, you can attract narcissists. I've seen that. But if you do not work on that Pluto, if you do not deal with the pain, trauma, and crises, whether it's from childhood or past lives, if you don't deal with the soul psyche, I've seen narcissistic behavior sometimes with the Pluto in the 12th house. What are your thoughts and experiences with that?
Yeah, that can have narcissistic abuse either coming or going, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Pluto ruling the underworld, I kind of like Pluto in the 12th house sometimes, in the sense that you can get people that have really symbolic dreams. So
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I mean, just, like full on Jungian analysis, like really, all the archetypes and everything, not just like, oh, I dreamed that I went to the store, on the corner or whatever. They're having these like mythic dreams.
Do you find that they can be powerful therapists and counselors too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very intuitive.
Yeah. Well, see now, okay, when you talk about 12th house of dreams, I got to say number one to me would be Uranus, because I lived that life, right? I have Uranus and Libra in the 12th house. I dreamt about 9/11 2 years before it happened. I dreamt about my wife before I met her. And I actually, when I was single and just dating and in relationships, I could see the women that I was in a relationship with when they were not with me. And to me, that's all Uranus. Like Uranus taps you into the higher spiritual realm, spiritual awakening, and but also sleeping's never been easy for me. Like I need the crystals. I gotta unplug the internet. Like you're very sensitive to
Well, that
technology.
nervous energy of Virgo, yeah, and I have it with Gemini. So yeah, I've gotten much better at sleeping the last couple years, but I mean, I have a lifetime of precognitive dreams. I mean, like literally probably 6 days a week, I have a precognitive dream. I mean, like I'll dream something in the morning, and then later that day, if we're watching a show on TV or something, the symbol for my dream that I couldn't figure out, oh, there it is. Or but then also out many years in advance. So I mean, I had dreams about 9/11 also, and
Yeah.
so yeah, which a lot of people did. I mean, when you have a big collective highly charged trauma, that seems to be the kind of thing that sends the energy back in time.
But okay, so that's fascinating that you say that, right? Because, and we'll get you guys in the chat in a second. A lot of people, and I've met quite a few also who have had those premonitions, but do you think it's because time is an illusion, or do you think because on some level it was pre-planned?
Well, isn't that the question of the ages?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't know. I have wondered about this because I also run into trouble where if I write fiction, it happens.
Ooh.
And it took me a long time um to kind of make peace with that, where it's like, oh no, actually I'm really precognitive and I get a lot of my ideas for writing through dreams, and my dreams are precognitive, and so of course it would come out in my fiction. Um but that doesn't really answer the question of what is the nature of time. Is it, do we have multiple realities and we get to choose? I mean, my working theory is that there's certain points where like a lot of different versions of us converge, and what I'm finding as an astrologer is that those convergence points tend to be when a transit goes exact.
Okay.
And so it will be, like if let's say you have like Pluto conjunct moon. Well, when Pluto goes exactly conjunct your moon, there may be certain circumstances that just like all converge there, where every different version of you is having a similar experience, when that goes exact. But yeah, I don't know the whole nature of time. It's interesting, but I mean, it's definitely not linear in my experience.
No, no.
So
Okay, so let's read last couple of comments. Mom left off on
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Audrey Dye said I have 5 Virgo placements. Then she said he was awesome, and then she said and she was a rock. And then Kay Coke Lock said,
Coco Locks, yeah.
Coco Lock
Hey,
said,
Coco Locks.
Mars is an action planet, so wars, military aggression, confrontations is what Mars. And then Audrey Dye said, YouTube, thank you so much for your time and energy, and I will look for her channel.
Yeah.
And then Yogini Star said, thanks for tonight and thanks for all the information. And then Theresa Miller said, Hotep and bright greetings, Eric and everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for
Coco
coming.
Lock said, I'll catch the rest tomorrow on playback.
Thank you, Coco Locks.
In the morning. Good night and rest well.
Okay.
I said I have my my Lilith in the 10th house. And then Lit Living in Truth said I have Lilith in Capricorn. Felix said Pluto conjunct Mars in the 11th house, and Lit said gratitude to you both for the knowledge shared on tonight's.
Okay, hold on. Let's stop right there. Felix, Pluto conjunct Mars. I wonder what sign it's in, Felix, in the 11th house. What do you think about that? Because that's
highly likely to have some sort of military involvement, and could be. I mean, the 11th house being the house of the group, but often Mars in the 11th house, there is some sort of military component. But with Pluto conjunct Mars in the 11th house, I mean, that's a good like CIA agent setup or something.
Well,
right?
you know what I find about Mars in the 11th? They can be really good at networking.
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
You know what I mean? Like I really find and Mars Pluto 11th, I mean, I have it. So not conjunct though, but I have both. And very much about sports because I did sports radio. And so the Mercury too, right? Me analyzing, assessing, and talking about sports, Virgo, and but also I find it, I use it, and I tap into it as an astrologer, right? 11th house, you're getting into the esoteric and astrology, aliens, UFOs, and I find that it's really I love the Mars Mercury Virgo for like reading a chart. Like I feel like it's just like like I'm like diving in and I've got to, like get all the calculations and figure out. So I think for me, with whether it's astrology or sports, I really tap in with Mars, Mercury, Pluto, and Virgo there. But one final thing that I really wanted to touch on. And you guys, thank you for staying and hanging out here with us in the live. And please, once the live is over, do me a favor, make sure you're hitting the like button, but come back and comment. That helps everything grow in the algorithms. And definitely go to Ask Laura Bruno, not only .com, but her YouTube, and subscribe to Laura's channel. But Laura, and I'm interested, Audra Dye, with your Lilith in the 10th house, have you ever kind of experienced some jealousy at work? She's a nurse, or even being hit on by older doctors or things like that, because that can play out sometimes with Lilith in the 10th house. The client that I mentioned that had that, they actually were like a lab tech in a hospital. And it was always like these, like Capricorn men energies, older men hitting on her. So I'm kind of curious about that, Audra, so share with us. But I want to ask you, I want to talk to the people, your thoughts for the Aquarius risings. I feel like they need their own special segment, right? How do you feel Pluto for the house of self, your upper jaw to your crown chakra, the house of your physical appearance, outer mass? What do you think the Aquarius risings could experience with this 20-year transit with Pluto and Aquarius?
I think they're going to have, again, depending on how you've been addressing these energies in other transits and other parts of your life. But I see it playing out as either there could be some kind of health challenge, or like how people perceive you could undergo a radical shift, and that could be positive or negative, right? Because people can project things onto you that aren't really there. And so if Pluto is crossing your ascendant, they may project Pluto onto you and all of those energies, and you may become their Pluto in their life temporarily, where they may have either an obsession with you or like a fear of you. There's a real, right? It's going to be polarized, whatever it is. Like, people are probably going to be really attracted and like really appreciative of you, or the opposite.
Yeah, Pluto in the ascendant, it is so it is very yin yang in that aspect. And it's like, I always think of my man also, it's a mixed bag, baby. You know what I mean? It's it is very like, you're super magnetized, all eyes on you, but then people can be very afraid of you, or very like turned away. I've seen it with, my young boys have the Capricorn Pluto, born with that. And they were like celebrities in Costco. You know what I mean? As little babies, like they go around in Costco and everybody knew the Taylor twins, so I could see where there's incidents of that, but there's such an intensity with Pluto on the ascendant, and I want to ask you with this as well. Do you find, I guess Pluto makes me think a bit, and plus we're on the 3rd-year anniversary of my NDE, but do you find in transit or in the natal chart, out of the big sort of 3 that create death or people fear, Saturn, Pluto, or Mars, where do you actually, in your experience, either in transit or in the natal chart, who is the most culprit or connected to the actual transition of the end of life?
So I have done a lot more charts for NDEs, so near-death experiences. I will say Pluto is the big one for that, which makes sense because the planet of death and rebirth. That makes sense that you would have that for more of a near-death.
Okay.
Jupiter plays out. Jupiter's an unexpected one, but if you think of death as a tremendous expansion, Jupiter shows up all the time in death transits in some way. Mars, when there's like an accident that causes it,
or an actual weapon.
An accident or a weapon, like murder or some kind of like a violent car accident or something like that.
Right.
Saturn, in the Middle Ages, when Saturn crossed your North Node, they were just like, "Oh, you're dying," because they didn't have psychology, they didn't have different levels. It's like, "Oh, it's the end of the line." And I do find that particular transit, it is the end of a line, but it's not necessarily the end of your life, but it will often mark the end of something significant. So Saturn shows up in endings a lot, but I
Well, I mean, I know for Saturn, like I said earlier, I experienced it personally. My mother's 12th
Mhm.
house, my 4th house. So it was literal for me. So I have to respect Saturn.
Right.
And
Oh yeah.
I've seen it, in that instance with just straight up with death. I haven't seen it, but my father was murdered when I was 6. So that was more of Mars
Mhm.
and a
Yeah.
ton of Scorpio energy. When I
Mhm.
looked at his progress chart, it was almost what I had for my NDE, 5 or
Mm.
6 placements in Scorpio.
Mm.
So in some ways, I would say, in all that I went through, it was kind of a miracle that I am still alive and
Oh,
that I
for sure.
made
Yeah.
it through because, the 6 markers in Scorpio, well, when I looked at my dad's chart, that was the end.
Yeah.
For me, in the progress chart, it was the death and rebirth.
Well, and you and I talked about this though, and I have found this another interesting thing in near-death experiences, because one of the things that I'm interested in is not only what's the exact trigger, right? So there's this, background energy happening for months or even years ahead of time, but then something comes along and it's like pop, and then it sets things off. But I also, and I don't have enough data for this,
Okay.
I would love to have more data of shared crossing experiences. So where somebody is dying, but somebody with them, or even thousands of miles away. I've had this where somebody's dying and I experience the death, right? Myself, like I feel the expansion. The light is coming into my chest, like everything,
Mm.
and I know, oh, somebody's dying right now, and it will be confirmed, later that at that exact time somebody left their body. But what I want to see is what is the difference between death transits and near death transits. And I don't have enough data to do that. It might be a different book because this book is already too big. But your progressed Venus conjuncted your natal ascendant at the time of your NDE. And so
You think that brought me back?
well, and you had kind of thought of Venus as like the guardian angel.
It is.
And
I've seen it with car accidents. I've seen it when I
Mhm.
saved my mother's life.
Yep.
Venus was there. My son will tell you, he was in the car. The car was totally totaled. My wife and the kids were in the car, $16,000 worth of damage. And it was Capricorn season. Venus, and it was my natal moon, which is my family, not just my mother. The moon is the family you create as well, you guys. And the 3rd house, local community. They're traveling to school, right? Elementary school. That's where they were going. Venus was there in transit. Not a scratch on my wife or any of the kids. When
Mhm.
my mother, on the day of the inauguration of Biden, choked on meatloaf, again, my son was there. I literally rushed. I was getting ready to walk out the door. If I would have, it happened another minute or 2 later, my mom would have died that day. My wife and I would have been gone. It would have just been my wife's business partner and the kids at home. And trust me, I had to move so quick. I got her out of the wheelchair, did the Heimlich on the floor. And before EMS could come, I got her mouth open to breathe again. I did not listen to 911. They said, do CPR.
Mm.
Intuitively knew, no, I can't go to CPR. I've got to get her breathing and open up the
Mhm.
mouth to get the air passage and scoop out some of the meatloaf. And I did. And so before EMS walked in the door, I got her breathing.
Mhm.
And guess what was there? It was all this stuff in her 3rd house of Taurus. She was a Pisces rising, Pisces moon. And, kind of going through the Uranus return, but not officially because, that's like, more 84.
Mhm.
She died at 80, but this was this was before her 80, before this was when she was still 79, but Uranus was already in Taurus, right?
Mhm.
But Venus was there in transit. And Mars, Taurus, it was like literally like something blocking and creating the throat, right? Swallowing. She got the meatloaf stuck in her throat. And then the Venus was there. And I have to double check, but I think the moon might have been there and it represented me, her family. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that was again the guardian angel. So yeah, Venus, you guys, in transit,
Mhm.
Venus will have your back.
Yep.
And I want to ask you this because it's interesting. Explain the Jupiter. I know Jupiter can expand the negative and the positive.
Mhm.
Like Jupiter trends in the fifth house. For example, I say Aquarius risings in Gemini, pregnancies, because
Mm.
Jupiter
Yeah, oh, yeah.
pregnancy. But when you say you've seen it connected with death, but is it aspecting Saturn, Pluto, or Mars in a way?
I would have to follow up on that. I
Okay.
mean, so Anne Kreilkamp is an astrologer, and she's the one that turned me on to, oh yeah, check out Jupiter and death. And I haven't necessarily noticed that it's a recurring thing in terms of which aspect is happening, just that Jupiter tends to be involved in both near-death experiences and especially in death experiences. And my explanation for that is that, death is an expansion. You're moving beyond this tiny physical reality, and so it makes sense that Jupiter would tie into that. But also with Jupiter expanding whatever else it's interacting with, of course, if it's interacting with a malefic or something, you're going to get an expanded experience of that.
Okay. Well, this has been amazing. Let's wrap up. You want to read the last couple of comments and then we'll get out of here. I feel like I've kidnapped you for long enough, but it's been such a fascinating talk. And I definitely, would love to have you back to talk about the book, because this is going to be a great, great book and extremely fascinating. And I'm honored to be a part of it and to be able to contribute. But I think that there's so much to learn and to gain, right? Near-death experiences have really been connected to helping, you see it advertised on Gaia all the time, but for letting people know that life does continue,
Mhm.
that, the soul goes on, but also that there are other dimensions and realms. And
Mhm.
that's what I actually personally experienced, never seeing darkness and seeing different dimensions. And so I think your book will be extremely helpful connecting kind of the physical and the astrological and spiritual, and these light body beings, these planets. So I'm very, very excited about that. Last couple of comments and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, so Felix the Rebel in Sagittarius is what he says. I guess it's off of something. And then Ajudai says, seems like all I have is basically one house and 11th house first house and 11th house placements.
Mm.
And
Join the club. Me too, Audrey.
it's annoying. And she said it's annoying. And then I'm super safe and would never do anything. And women are jealous around me, and men are asses. But I call them out. I do have 5 Scorpio placements.
Oh, so that's referring to her Lilith in the 10th house at work. Okay,
Mm.
interesting. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we have Kim.
Hey, Kim.
Kayla, is she new?
Yeah, welcome. She's also a new client. Hi,
Kim, you're
Kim.
gonna have to come back another day and give us your big 3, but because we won't be able to get to it tonight. But she says she's late.
That's all right, Kim.
But that's all right.
Thank
We
you.
are happy to see you.
And I look forward to meeting you.
Follow us.
Yeah.
Follow, hit subscribe. And you know what? Laura, do you have a YouTube page?
Yeah, we've already been talking about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
And we're going to
sorry.
wrap up.
Well,
No,
there
yeah.
we go.
Everyone's got to go to Ask Laura Bruno, not only .com, but to follow and subscribe to her channel, Ask Laura Bruno on YouTube. And everything's down below in the description. And you guys, thanks again. This was so fun. We really hope that we gave you a lot of insights for 2025. Do you want to say anything? Do you know about that? Besides the Aries Pisces Mercury retrograde, do you know the second one in the year?
Yeah, I can get that for you.
Was it a Leo
So
Virgo or
7/17, so July 17th, it stations retrograde
Leo Cancer?
in Leo, 15 Leo, and then stations direct on August 11th at 4 Leo. So that one's entirely in Leo.
Okay, so just
Yeah.
fire. That'll be really interesting, you guys. So kind of right after Uranus Gemini, and then a little month after Jupiter Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be Gemini, Cancer, Leo in big storylines for July and June, July, and then going into August. So, okay. And is there? I'm
There's
sure.
another one on November 9th, and that's at 6 Sag. So 6 Sagittarius is where it stations retrograde, and then stations direct on 11/29 at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So that's another one where it's going to be
Fire to
crossing
water.
that. Yeah, it'll be crossing that cusp.
Wow. Okay. So we got so fire's in play for the Mercury retrogrades, and with 2 mixed in water. So, all right, you guys, this has been more than fun. Laura, you are absolutely the best. I could talk astrology with you all day and all night. So we kind of see things the same, even though you mainly look at Placidus and I look at whole sign. It's, when you sort of, have a similar astrology brain and just that energy of tapping into the intuitive aspect of it, it makes for always fun and great conversations. So definitely keep us updated, and we'll have to really let everybody know when your book comes out so people can go and get it, and then maybe do a podcast really exploring it, to really promote it and explore it, because NDEs with astrology, there's something there.
It's going to take a little while to get this thing written, because I'm trying to, it's very complicated, right? There's so many different things going on, and I'm trying to write it in such a way that even people that don't know a lot about astrology but are interested just in consciousness or in what happens once we leave our bodies, that they're able to kind of follow it, and it's interesting without just sounding like an ephemeris. Like I don't want to just be listing like all the degrees and signs for everything. So
yeah.
It'll be a little while.
I get it. And, I think that it's fascinating that you saw more stuff in my progress chart. And I would definitely say that the Venus, the transit of the square, but what I sort of really figured out and shared with my wife is that even though, and this was just in, not in real life. In real life, she was fighting for my life and helped save my life with, getting me on the right tube feed and advocating for me with the doctors. But the Venus squaring the Pluto, right? So that was Venus in Libra and Pluto in Capricorn at the time of my falling into coma, September 6th. And then when you talked about that progress chart, Venus hitting my ascendant, I never gave up the faith, right? I never gave up on my kids, on my life, on my marriage. Even in coma, I told my wife, I'm going to be here. She was going to leave with my Gemini son and go down to Atlanta, and he was, he's an actor and pursue acting, and leave me alone with the twins. And I said to her, I said, I don't know why you're doing this, but I love you so much, and I know you're going to come back, and you know what I mean. So there's this faith over fear, but there's never giving. I didn't quit on the love and the relationship, and I really connect that to part of me. And then calling on God, and Yeshua called on God, and Jesus, my mom, my wife, and my 4 sons. I really connect that to, and then, when you said that, it really like poured over my heart and soul with the Venus on the ascendant, just keeping that, right, especially key word with Venus and Scorpio, devotion, loyalty.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So there you go. And it's like, that's heavy. I gotta look at that again and pour over that. So thank you for that insight, my friend. You guys, this has been amazing. Astrology 2025, Pluto Aquarius, Pisces North Node, Mars Venus and Mercury retrograde, Uranus Gemini, Jupiter Cancer, and astrology NDEs with the amazing Laura Bruno. This was great. Any last messages for the collective, Laura?
Oh, just a big thanks to you. And also, I think 2025 has a lot to offer. I really feel like one of the nice things about that North Node moving into Pisces is it's a return of hope also. There is that I just got goosebumps. There is that sense of really finding the transcendent spiritual energy. And I mean, it's kind of like Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning, right?
Mhm.
Like if you can find some kind of meaning, if you can create something beautiful, even if hard stuff has happened,
Yeah,
even if difficult things happen, the ability to take that and turn it into something beautiful, I feel like that's what's going to heal humanity.
I love that so much and true. And when I think of the Pisces energy and with all the stuff that's going to be dancing there, it also with the North Node and Neptune and Saturn, it brings into me the agape Christ-like love, Book of Ephesians, but also compassion and empathy.
Mhm.
The most unrealistic, idealistic, and like true deep love. That's why Venus is exalted in Pisces, and you
Yeah.
you really see it and feel it there. So I love that message you said, and I feel like love will be the answer for 2025. And I
Mhm.
do think that there'll be challenges,
Oh yeah.
but and a lot of new energy shifts, but we're coming to the end, universal 9 year and end of a cycle in 2025. And I do believe, it's going to take us to really walking in and feeling and experiencing that age of Aquarius that we're already dancing in now.
Mhm.
So fun, my friend. So thank
Yeah.
you. And of course, I will definitely have to have you back on again. So you guys have a good night. Please, comment, like, share, subscribe, come back and put a comment and go follow Ask Laura Bruno on YouTube. And this has been episode 270 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast, 2025.